Hola! It is 8th of March and the whole world is celebrating the International Women's Day today. On this occasion, I have an extremely special guest joining me on the show, and she happens to be the first woman cyclist on the show. Laura Quirke, who resides and works in London, United Kingdom, is a passionate cyclist, a traveler, a mother of two, and a cancer survivor. She has fought cancer not only once but twice in her lifetime, and even though life has thrown a number of curveballs at her, she has not let them bog her down. Instead, she has emerged out stronger. After completing therapy of her second bout of cancer, she completed a 1,000-kilometer bike ride in another country, that is Colombia. Her journey is absolutely fascinating and inspiring. Let's go find out more about it. So hi Laura, welcome to Roadbenders. Thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And recently you completed a 1,000-kilometer cycle ride in Colombia. Your journey is absolutely fascinating, and I've been very eager to talk to you and learn more about it. So could you begin by telling us a little more about your 1,000-kilometer bike ride in Colombia?
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be able to have this chat with you. I have, as you know, just come back from a month cycling in Colombia. It's been my biggest challenge so far, and I was really challenged to do it by my friend Brian, whose wife Jenny, also my good friend, died at the age of just 49. So Brian asked me to do this in her memory. He also was a very good friend because he wanted to get me back on my bike, because I have, as you mentioned, had a few years of ill health, and primarily being diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016 and then kidney cancer 2 years later. So I've had lots of treatment and lots of surgery, and as I'm sure you're well aware, cancer treatment really does take it out of you, and cycling took a back seat, so to speak. So Brian challenged me. He also said he'd like me to do it for charity. So I chose to cycle in Colombia, self-funded, self-supported, for a homeless shelter in my hometown of Leamington in the UK, and also for a charity called Children Change Colombia, which supports children who are at risk still from the really turbulent history that has been the story of Colombia for the past 30 or 40 years.
That's absolutely incredible. And congratulations to you for completing the 1,000-kilometer bike ride. It was definitely not a cakewalk, and I salute your spirit. So can you tell us, when did your cycling journey actually begin?
Well, I've always cycled. I can remember having a bike as a kid, but I wasn't particularly interested in it then. I really became quite passionate about it when we lived as a family in Vancouver, and I had the most fantastic commute where I would cycle from our home and cycle along the beach to our office in downtown Vancouver. That was quite something. A little bit different to the commute I have done in more recent years to my office in London. That's a little bit more challenging, not quite so scenic, to be honest. It was an exhilarating commute. I then got interested in more longer distances when I came back from Vancouver, and I got a place in the first Ride London 100, which is the annual legacy event which came out of the Olympics in 2012 that were held in London. Ride London 100 was at that point an enormous distance as far as I was concerned, and I trained for it. So it got me into riding longer distances. And then I got interested in touring cycling. So I took my mountain bike to Scotland, which I love, and to northern England on a few occasions. Back in 2015, I then did my first tour abroad, and I joined a group that was cycling in Kerala in India. That was a fantastic ride, and I can assure you the roads in Kerala are a whole lot better than the roads around where I live here. I can't remember seeing any potholes, It was quite incredible. Then in 2017, I went with two friends. We all took our Brompton folding bikes to Puglia in Italy. That was pretty hilly, but those bikes stood the test, and we had a great trip. So Colombia is my latest adventure, very different again, and I took my Brompton. The question is, where am I going to go next? I'm not quite sure. But I've become a bit of a closet follower of cyclists who are out there around the globe at the moment, looking at the fantastic trips they do in countries everywhere, really. I think I probably do want to go back to South America. There's a lot more to it than just Colombia, and I had such a good time. People are amazing.
That's wonderful. Clearly, you enjoy exploring new places on your bike. So, can you tell me how has cycling changed the way you look at
Well,
life?
cycling is many things. It's transport. It gets you from place to place. It's exercise. It's fun. It can be torture. I won't deny it. It's not always fun. But it's also, I find, therapeutic. So this is very true when my mother was ill and dying back in 2014. Actually, being on my bike just helped me get out of a stressful situation and just think about the experience that I was undergoing emotionally as well as physically. And certainly if I have a project at work, then being on my bike helps me work through things and come up with solutions to problems that might have arisen. It helps you see the wood for the trees. And if there is anything stressful in life, being out on the bike really does help you prioritise, to really think through what matters to you in life. So cycling is all those things to me. And of course, while it hasn't itself changed my outlook on life, I mean, to be honest, that was what cancer did for me. That changed my outlook. But as a result of my changing approach to life, one of the things that's way up there and the things that matters to me is cycling. Time is never wasted when you're on a bike. And of course, isn't it fantastic when you're passing a whole row of traffic that's completely stuck in a jam and you're flying through on your two wheels? Can't beat it. Great feeling.
I couldn't agree more to this. The time is never wasted when you're on your cycle. So, can you tell me what is your mantra to pedaling long distances?
I feel a little bit of a fraud answering this question about what's the secret to long distance cycling, because I'm fairly limited in what I've done. And there are people out there who do an awful lot more than I have done or will ever do. However, for me, I think it's about planning. You have to know where you're going, but also you have to plan for if you don't get there. So, for example, if you are aiming to do 70 odd miles, but there's a chance you might only do 40 or 30 because you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what's around the corner, then you need to know that there will be places to stop and provide what you need along the way. So always have a backup. There was a day we were cycling to, where was it? Might have been the day we went to Cartagena, actually. We ended up doing 72 miles. Originally, we'd set out to do 40. But when we got to 40, we found there wasn't suitable accommodation. So we then thought, okay, there's got to be somewhere between here and Cartagena. Well, there wasn't. So we had to pedal furiously to make sure we got to Cartagena on time and with enough water and supplies to keep us going. And we did get there, but it was touch and go. And we were there just after dark. It was the only time we had to put our lights on from memory. So yes, planning is essential. You also have to have the ability for when you get in a situation like that to just put your head down and pedal. You can't stop. You might be as tired as anything, but you can't stop in the middle of nowhere. You've just got to keep going. And you have to be prepared for that. And really, you've got to be driven by a desire to want to see something new places every day, new people. You've got to keep that movement. This isn't a case of going round in a circle. You're moving on and on each day to somewhere new, somewhere you've never been. And I think that takes a particular mindset. You are going to be out of your comfort zone. But I enjoy that. And Colombia was definitely out of my comfort zone. But I'd happily go back tomorrow.
I agree. Long distance cycling is as much about your mental strength as it is about your physical strength. So, can you tell me about any memorable incident from your cycle tour in Colombia?
Ooh, I have lots and lots of memorable incidents. What shall I choose? Well, I'll give you a few. There was the day we'd been cycling into a headwind, and we'd got 40 miles in and decided to change our plan. So we decided on that day we were going to go and get a bus to see if we could get somewhere away from the headwind. So we cycled to a bus station in Valle du Par, and as we arrived, somebody came out and said, do you want to go to Santa Marta? And I said, no, actually, we want to go to Rio Hacha. And he said, no, Santa Marta. And we said, no, we want to go to Rio Hacha. So we carried on walking to the bus station. And then a policeman came up to us and said, are you going to Santa Marta? No, we're going to Rio Hacha. And he said, no, you're not going to Rio Hacha. You must go to Santa Marta. Anyway, the lack of his English and my Spanish wasn't very helpful. But what we did find out eventually was that we were being redirected to Santa Marta because one of the guerrilla groups, the ELN guerrillas, had announced a 3-day armed strike. And what that meant was anybody on the roads that weekend, on the main roads, was in danger of goodness knows what. Kidnap, robbery, who knows, could have been worse. So we took the advice of the policeman and other people, and we took the bus to Santa Marta, where we had to dip our toes in the Caribbean Sea for 3 days while waiting for this armed strike to end. We did manage to get some cycling in at the same time, just not on the main roads. And eventually we did get back to our travelling. So that was one pretty memorable moment. I did have my phone stolen from off the bike. That was the only negative that I can tell you about. And of course, it could have happened anywhere. And I knew it was going to happen. I could see it was about to happen, but I was too slow to respond properly. So that was a bit of a disappointment. However, soon fixed. And other memorable times? Well, don't trust Google Maps. Because when we were in Medellin, we were trying to find our hotel and Google sent us completely the wrong way. And if you've ever been to Medellin, you'll know that it's the main city's in a valley. The rest of it is up very, very steep hillsides. And that's what Google did to us. It sent us several hundred feet. I wish I could remember the exact number. I'll need to go check it out. Up this hillside, anyway, to a non-existent hotel. So that was pretty memorable for the wrong reasons.
Okay, so I'm very eager to ask you my next question. That is the choice of bike for the Colombia tour. You chose a very different bike, that is the Brompton, for the tour. So can you tell me the reasons why you chose this specific bike for the tour?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I took my 6-speed Brompton, which I'd actually upgraded to the 6-speed from my 3-speed, which is the one I took to Italy. And it was provided by my local bike shop, John Atkins Cycles. And it has been the most amazing bike. 6 speeds, but it has quite a wide range of gearing. So it managed to tackle some pretty challenging inclines. I mean, the Andes are not hills. They're pretty steep. That doesn't mean I didn't walk, because I did. I walked a lot when it got particularly steep. But the Brompton is incredible. Small wheels and not these big fat tyres, but they cope with every road surface that we came across. Some roads completely disappeared. Others were gravel, lots of potholes. The main roads, however, were excellent. But as I say, the Brompton copes brilliantly. And of course, it also attracted lots of attention. It was a real talking point, which was great fun. So the Brompton as well, it has pretty good luggage carrying capacity. So I had a big Brompton bag on the front and a Brompton bag on the rack at the back. And that was enough for me for all the stuff I had for that month in Colombia. Yep, I'd recommend the Brompton every time. I love it. I have 4 bikes, and I have to say it's the most expensive of my bikes, but it's also my favourite. And I look forward to going with it on many different trips in future.
I absolutely agree on that. You and your partner in crime, the Brompton, did it pretty well together. So can you tell me about the high point of your trip?
There are so many highlights to choose from. That's really difficult. A general highlight is that the people were so friendly and so willing to help us. It was quite funny because, as I said, my Spanish isn't that good. And people would talk to us, and I'd say quite clearly that I couldn't speak much, just poco or even poquito Espanol. But they'd carry on talking. They didn't mind. So they were just so keen to help and find out more about us. So the people were fantastic. Particular highlights, there's the day we managed to cycle 75 miles to get to Barranquilla just in time for it to go dark and just in time for the start of Carnival, which was very exciting and good fun. There's the time when I had a whole group of school children around me, fascinated by the bike. And as I unfolded it, they all went, wow, that was very funny, but absolutely lovely. There's the time I met a soldier who tried to unfold my bike as well, and he failed. Also very funny, and I captured that on video, actually. You can see it. So lots of highlights. But in fact, it's so early that I'm still kind of absorbing all the highlights. But hopefully that gives you a flavour of some of them.
Okay, so when it comes to long distance cycling, you have to be careful about what you eat. So are you following a specific diet plan?
I'm not very strict when it comes to diet. I'm even less strict about diet than I am about training. That's saying something. But when I'm riding, I don't eat a lot. I do eat little and often, and it's usually bananas and salted peanuts are my thing. I will try and have an egg or two before a big ride. But otherwise, as I say, it's just little snacks and lots and lots of drinking. Again, little and often, but always drinking as you're going along. In Colombia, I would occasionally have a treat and give myself a bit of an empanada if we were stopping somewhere en route. But otherwise, yeah, I just don't have the need to eat other than my peanuts. At the end of the rides each day in Colombia, meals tended to be rice-based, which is fine. I love rice. And I also enjoyed zoppa, so the different variety of soups that they make everywhere, which are incredibly delicious and very healthy. Other than that, no, I'm afraid I probably don't follow the rules.
So clearly you love to cycle. But is there any other fitness regimen that you follow?
Well, cycling is the thing I do most and almost exclusively. I am getting back into yoga, although I am the most inflexible person in my yoga class. My cousin is a champion international representative for Australia at yoga. I can't even sit cross-legged. It's very embarrassing. But yoga is good at helping you counter some of the impact of cycling. So I guess that's the main alternative thing that I do. I quite enjoy walking, but I'd much rather be on my bike. You get further faster and you see so much more.
So, for your 1,000 kilometer bike ride, you chose Colombia, which is in South America and very far from England. So, was there any specific reason why you chose Colombia?
Well, the reason I chose to go to Colombia is a little bit odd, to be honest. I've never been to South America, or I hadn't until I went on the 1st of February. But I developed an interest in Colombia when I watched the drama documentary Narcos, all about Pablo Escobar and the drug barons and the devastating impact they had on the country. Now, I'm not saying I went because I wanted to see what Pablo had been up to and see if I could find out where he'd hidden some of the money. But what fascinated me was the language, which is beautiful, the people, and the countryside. It is just fascinating. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's so varied. Colombia's got both a Pacific and a Caribbean coast. It's got the Amazon, although I didn't quite make it this time. Next time I'll have to go and give it another go. So that's where the germ of the idea started. I did then try to learn a bit of Spanish, but can't say I succeeded very well. I can speak a little bit more than I could when I went out in February. And I also decided to take my fold-up Brompton again. Frankly, that's because I didn't train as I should have done for this trip. So Brian had encouraged me to get back on my bike, and I've been planning this trip for a long time, but I didn't do as much training. Well, I didn't do any training. So I did get concerned at one point that I would find it too hard. And so taking my Brompton meant that if I really did find it difficult, I could fold the bike up and get on a bus. So it just helped me deal with what I was about to face. In fact, both the Brompton and I survived. We did it.
So, finally, we're at the last question. If you could say a few words for your fellow cyclists.
Cycling opens up new worlds. It's how you discover things you didn't know about your own neighbourhood, as well as how you can discover other countries and communities. I find that cycling also develops new friendships, and cyclists are on the whole a very friendly bunch. If you stop for a breather and there's another cyclist passing by, they will stop and have a chat, and you'll compare your bikes and your destinations. One of the reasons I wanted to keep cycling is that it will also keep me fitter as I get older. It certainly is doing that. And I think if I ever had to invest in an electric bike, then I will do so. But there's a few years, hopefully, before I have to think about that. So if ever you can cycle instead of drive, do. It's good for everybody and it's good for the world. And don't forget, if you're passing another cyclist, give them a wave and a smile. We're all in, it's like being in on one big secret. If a cyclist doesn't wave to you, they're not a proper cyclist. Of course, if you pass a cyclist who's in need of help, please give it, because one day you might be that cyclist needing help.
Thank you, Laura, for taking out the time to share your incredible story with us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and all that you've said has been extremely inspiring to me. And I'm sure that anybody else who happens to see this interview will be equally inspired. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.